Hey, I'm Cyclon, and with the league only being away one final day, I wanted to share one more build guide. Well, there isn't really much big of a guide behind it, but one more build that you can pick to play with an aurabot or in a group of 3 and then more players. However, for a 6-man party, I don't think I'm the right person to ask for a build guide, so that just said, this is more like for a duel and then maybe try a trio or quad party, and then that's about it. And I'm talking about the Spark Assassin or the Spark Witch. So both have their upsides, and this is not a build that you can just say, I'm going to league start as this. Or maybe there is, but I would not recommend it. I would say you pick any good league starter build that's either on a witch or on a trapper, an assassin, a shadow, and then you do, okay, I'm going to level this. For example, you can go Fistrax or Elemental Explosive Arrow Ballista. And you're going to level a set, you're going to early map a set, and once you have all the really required pieces for this build, you transition over into this, and you're going to destroy the game. As you can see here, we are looking at 32 million point 5 damage with just 12 spark hits. Now, this is what I assume it is, because I never really understood how Spark is calculated. We have a one-time hit of Spark from 145k. If we do hit, we're going to do that damage on average. We have a cast rate of 4, so that means in a second we're going to cast 4 Spark projectiles, which are going to hit the boss and then apply the damage. Now, what we are not considering here is that these projectiles have, because of the scaling, what we do with the tree, what we've picked up, have about 3-second duration and have a high flying speed. So these projectiles, the 4 single spark projectiles you fire, can hit the boss again. On top of that, we are going to use a pinpoint, which I haven't even considered if we look at the intensity. So we are assuming you fire spark projectile, move. So that is even more damage you can get out of that. But that is just in 1 second. So those 4 projectiles of the first second go for 3 seconds. Then on the next second you fire 4 more projectiles, if not more, because of multiple projectiles, because of the pinpoint, because of the circle firing. There's a lot of stuff you can do to fire more projectiles. Dying Sun. So there is even more. So you are most likely not only hitting with 12 projectiles a second, but then suddenly with 24 or 36. And it's going to be quite a lot of damage very quickly because of how we scale it. So these 32 is just a minimum estimation that you can easily get, and I think you can get way more. So this is a high damage build, and it requires an aurabot to achieve that high damage and to survive whatever comes against you, because the survivability of this build isn't that good in return. As we are assuming we're going to kill everything before it touches us, we are not really the tankiest build. I don't really want to show the calcs even, that looks quite sad. We get a bit of evasion rating armor from the aurabot, and we have about 5k ES. And our last survivability layer is that we are going to use a Watcher's Eye, and if we have a spare point, Ghost Dance. Watcher's Eye with Discipline, ES on hit, because we're going to hit many times, we're going to rely on that, and just hope that we're not getting one-shotted. For that, Aurabot, Sewer Link, maybe taunting enemies. There's a lot of things you can do to ease you up there. That being said, let's take a look at what exactly this build gets to scale so heavily. So in the configuration, do not be surprised, I have added the aura effect from the aurabot. I've added the auras which we can use on a high investment aurabot, on a one that min-maxing effect and aura amount. We have haste, rest, zero tree as offensive auras, and we have malevolence as a blessing aura. So those have a generosity that has a blessing, and then all the auras we are using that doesn't reserve, and that the auras grant attack at cast speed, which gets amplified by the aura effect. So that results in us having a high cast speed and having a high increased damage and more damage. Now we somehow need to scale that further. We are going to do several things. We are going to use a Purposeful Harbinger on a medium cluster. which is going to increase aura effectiveness. So let's say our aurabot has an aura with 241 base effectiveness. Increased. 241 effectiveness overall. That means those 241 is the base that comes into you and gets amplified by 40%. So it's not just that you would say, okay, you have an increased aura effect of what we said, 117, now it's a 157. No, it's a 117. That means we have a 217 effect. So if we do a calculator, we have 217, which we take times 1.4. So that means suddenly we have a 300 effectiveness of the auras. That is a big improvement. Now for that we do need to use 5 different heralds, because we don't want to spend any other notable on this. So we're going to use the herald cluster and pretty much all 5 reservation, our reservation is solely for the heralds. Then we can pick up heraldry to apply exposure, which is a good amount of damage, but there are other ways to gain the exposure. We only really need the cold and fire one. And we're picking up Secrets of Suffering, so instead of applying chill, freeze and shock, we are applying scorch, brittle and zapped. And there again you can see that is a lot of damage because we apply scorch and brittle. And there, as I wasn't fully sure if we can reach the maximum effect, I've picked up half effectiveness of both. So kind of say, okay, this is average. I think you can be pretty confident reaching that. If not, you can adjust it. It shouldn't hurt the damage too much, while it does hurt a little bit. Otherwise, I just said you have power and frenzy charges and onslaught, which I think is pretty reasonable, achievable with an aurabot, as you will have allies next to you and the aurabot giving you onslaught if there are 5 or more allies. Your minions count towards it, easy onslaught, and the power and frenzy charges you should be able to generate. So next thing, we are going to use 3 medium clusters with aerodynamics and streamlined for the maximum amount of projectile speed, so that our spark hits more often in a second. Also we get additional pierce from this, as we want for mapping. We need the pierce so the spark can hit as many enemies as possible. We're going to use 2 more of those here, and the small ones are pretty much just ES, energy from Nord. Nothing else on them, just for getting the ES, the survivability base that we need. We are going CI for no chaos damage, and our tree is pretty much just, we have crit multi, power charge for more crit multi and crit chance, Disciple of the Forbidden for more power charge buffs, a bit of ES, bit of cast speed and crit multi, more crit multi, Soul Thief with evasion energy for a bit of survivability, so we don't die too many times, infusion. Here we have the hazardous research. I have kept the legacy one at that point because Spark will get, I think, an additional projectile, not 2 anymore, but it shouldn't hurt too much, and we do most likely want to fire them in a Nova. If for boss it is an issue and you would rather fire them in front, you could just drop it out for a boss fight. And we pick up piercing shots with the pierce and knocking back enemies which we have critical strike. So that means we can push the enemies back, they are not going to hurt us. We have a very high crit chance of 84%, very easy to keep that, and we pick up Survivalist for +1 maximum cold. And I forgot that Unnatural Calm gives us +1 to lightning. Also, I have not placed any leveling trees here, and the tree for Witch and Assassin are literally the same. The only thing we change is the ascendancy, and that the reason is pretty simple too. The Witch is for more mapping focused. Because we have Profane Bloom and we're going to use a curse on hit, every enemy we kill will have a 40% chance to explode. Outside of that, we have Frigid Walker for a bit of damage and Void Beacon for a bit of damage to nearby enemies, so especially for bosses, and Forbidden Power for power charge damage. And the Assassin instead will have literally just damage. We maxing out our crit. We cannot take Reflect, which is nice to have for stuff like Atziri, Uber Atziri. Then we have the power charge nodes, and we have Elusive for a bit of survivability. And that's about it. It doesn't have explosion, so if you can supplement explosions in a different way, go for that. Then Assassin might be better. But if you say, I want to run Delirium maps 24/7, that is my thought. I want to have fun. I think a Witch would be a better option for you. And that would also fit kind of with what you can level with. You could take a trapper, level into assassin as you want to focus bosses and you want to kill imitations in like a second. Then the assassin would be perfect for that. Or you say, okay, I want to do delirium map, so you could take elemental explosive arrow ballistas for early, and then once you can switch to this, you can switch here and have a perfect mapping ascendancy on the occultist. Okay, let's take a look at the skills. It's pretty simple. We have Spark or War Spark with Cold to Fire conversion, Spell Echo, Pinpoint. As I said, we're going to use this so we have the single target damage improved while also having area damage without losing too much damage, faster projectiles because we want the Spark to hit more often. We will keep that even for bosses, and critical damage because our crit chance is high enough. Can also place a Tornado with Fist to Lightning and Cold to Fire and increased duration for even more single target. We are going to use a 3-link Herald plus Enlightened level 3, so we have actually mana to do our stuff with Purity, Ash and Ice, or pretty much any auras, and then the other 2s in a 2-link. And we have a Flame Dish with Arcane Surge, and, well, Elemental Weakness on hit. We do not have a ring slot open, so I would not recommend getting additional curse, and then say you're going for any mark. I guess if the aurabot could take up Rixon's entrapment and could pick up Sniper's mark, so he doesn't override your elemental weakness, but apply sniper marks on bosses for even more insane damage. However, it is not really necessary with those numbers. It can be quite amazing, but not really needed. And in case you want to improve even further, we can go with a Divergent Spark to fire more projectiles. And we can go with an Anomalous Cold to Fire or Fist to Lightning for more conversion, as we have an item that makes conversion into more damage. And then we have all the auras from the aurabot. That is the auras taken at that level from the from my aurabot guide, from my maximum aura effect bot. And that's about it. We can pick up our Lyra for more crit multi and a tiny bit resistances, so we have an easier time overcapping them. And now to the crazy items and why this one is not a league starter. On our weapons we want a Nebulous 2 times. Nebulous is going to improve our damage the further our maximum capped resistance cold and fire is above 75, cold and lightning. As you can see, we have 88 cold and 88 lightning, so that means we have 13 additional 13 times 19 or 13 times 20. Getting that 20 is quite a lot. Do not underestimate that. You want this as 2020 if possible, but 1919 is good enough, or early on any is good enough. Then we have any helmet with ES. Obviously an enchantment would be better, but I just taken the ES to make at least a tiny bit cost reduction. And now here we come, Incandescent Heart, an absolutely amazing chest, as it gives you elemental damage as extra chaos damage. So you have your lightning damage. That takes then, before we have a conversion, we have added damage. So 20% of our lightning damage gets added as chaos damage on top. Then we convert our lightning to cold damage, and we take 20% of our cold damage then and add it as chaos. Now we convert our cold damage to fire damage and take 20% of our fire damage as extra chaos. So we have 20% of our lightning which we convert to cold, 20% of our cold which we convert partially to fire, and 20% of our fire as extra chaos damage, which does add up quite a bit. Our gloves are pretty much just ES with elemental weakness. If you cannot get ES, it's going to be a bit harder to survive, but we want damage over survivability here. As our boots, we're going to take the Void Walker for the additional piercing, and we have a nice little Celestial Footprint. And then we have phasing, which is nice to have as we cannot get stuck in enemies. Also, it gives dexterity, which we do need. We have an Ethereal Amulet, Badge of the Brotherhood, to scale our power charges as Frenzy charges through. We are scaling as many power charges as we can get. We have many power, we have many Frenzy charges. That means more effectiveness of Elusive. And yeah, more damage. Then we have 2 Call of the Brotherhoods to gain our lightning with the Catalyst of Elemental modifier to convert 96% of our lightning damage to cold damage and our cold damage can shock against frozen enemies. However, we cannot shock, so we ignore that part. The build, we take a heavy build because we do need the strength, which we then could use strength catalysts on, and then any ES or dexterity craft. For our flask, we're going to have a little bit of a damage setup. Overflowing Chalice to gain our other flask more often in maps, Dying Sun for more projectiles, Aziri's Promise for getting more physical elemental damage as chaos damage, and then we have chaos damage leads us life, but we are with the eye, so we don't leech that. We could, if we can somehow get a Keystone Zealot's Oath or a max level and can travel over there, we can pick up Zealot's Oath and Ghost Reaver to have that leeched. However, with this it's good enough and we can get Spell Leech as ES instead. And lastly, you can use a Bottled Phase to have more single target damage. However, I know this is pricey, and if you take it out, I haven't even considered that in the full TPS, I just realized. So easy, more damage. And lastly, Quicksilver, because we want to be fast. The classes are already covered, there's pretty much nothing else to say about this. This is again a pretty insane build, but also pretty pricey. I would only recommend that if you have an aurabot, you're going to know, hey, we're going to play for a week, 2 weeks, and we're going to push the utmost limit we can do. Then I would say go early on, get any of the meta builds that you know is going to work for the content you want to do. Just buy the expensive items you need for those, because you're most likely going to resell those before they're going to drop, because the people, other people are now just reaching the point where they will start buying those items. This is again really awesome, really good for example delirium farming or invitation farming with a high quantity. I can just recommend this to party players. I played the aurabot for this setup with brands at that point, but I think Spark is just better. Back in, I actually forgot which league it was. I think it was the, league with Echoes. No, it was the league after Echoes of the Atlas, because I made a mana miner before it got nerfed, and we made a mirror, a headhunter, and still a lot of eggs left over in just 5 days. 6 days, and that was just insane. It's really a lot of fun. You just need to have a buddy who is enjoying playing the aurabot a lot, or you enjoy playing the aurabot a lot and you carry playing this a lot, because if you don't enjoy the playstyle, it can get quite boring quite quickly. But if you do enjoy the playstyle, this is an unstoppable force on either ascendancy, and I can just recommend this further. That being said, I dream talked long enough about this. Have a great day and have a wonderful league start. May you get a tabula on the beach.